Hello and welcome to the Sky Sports F1 podcast brought to you by Dropbox. I'm Matt Baker, and to help me look back on a historic weekend out in Las Vegas, I'm joined by, in my humble opinion, the best dressed man all weekend in our team, Jenson Button, and of course the 2009 Formula One World Champion. Jenson, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm really good, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a toughie, Vegas, because it's a night race. It's just long days, but I'm recovered. Yeah.
I think best dressed. I mean, all of our team put in a lot of effort across the weekend. I think you look the suavest. I mean, Simon yesterday was in his sort of big black coat and white, sort of unbuttoned white shirt. I think you nailed it.
He looked like he was at the dog races.
Yeah.
But I like the look. No, but I mean, they're going to hate you for saying that, but thank you very much. Yes. No, it's a fun race because, yeah, we're all told to dress up in slightly Vegas style, which is always tricky. But it was really good fun. And I love a bit of dress up. And I must say the whole paddock looked very smart.
Definitely the smartest race of the year. I want to talk about your weekend. Busy weekend for you. We had a hot lap. You took, sorry, Simon, for bashing you, but it's always good to make Simon look a bit scared on a hot lap. You did that very, very well. But I want to talk to you about the post-race interviews with Terry Crews. I mean, that was brilliant. Kind of this new double act. I don't think any of us in Formula One thought we needed or knew we needed, but you delivered it, and it was so good. How was it doing that with Terry?
Great, because it turned out really well. But actually, I didn't know he was going to be there until 1.5 minutes before we went live.
Right.
And then Terry turned up. I was like, cool, this is awesome. No, big fan. And he's larger than life. He really is. So it was great. And, you know, he loves his motorsport. He understands Formula One. And I thought he came across really well, because it's very tricky because, you know, he's talking basically to the new world champion, Max Verstappen, and the top three. And he has to come across like he knows what he's talking about. And you know, the F1 community, the fans, the supporters, they know so much about this sport. It's scary. So for someone like him to step up and have the confidence to deliver a question, I thought was great. And yeah, he was a lot of fun up there, and all the drivers were very open to his questions, which was nice.
Some people might be quite intrigued to know because that was away from the podium. So did you miss the end of the race in order to get in a car, go down to that part of the circuit and then get back? It's not all glamour, is it? That's actually quite a stressful experience, I imagine, trying to get from A to B.
It was actually okay. They 5 laps before the end of the race had to jump in a car, and then you go and wait because the circuit's obviously still got racing cars going around it. So we had to wait until it closed, and then we could drive down the track together. But yeah, so it was in front of the Bellagio, which is the other side of the circuit, really. And it was really cold, and because it was a windy day, you had all the water, especially when the fountain was on, coming over and sort of covering us as we were doing the interview. But it didn't matter. It was a pretty awesome place to be. You know, it's always, for me, it's a really interesting dynamic, you know, interviewing racing drivers, as I was in F1 for so long and still race. But post-race, when you've got the top three, there's always a great atmosphere, and I love doing those interviews and interacting.
I was going to say, you're sort of becoming, I've put here, a Max Verstappen world champion winning podium interviewer specialist. What is it? I mean, you've had 2 now. You had Japan, and it was a good job we did have you in Japan, because do you remember sort of Johnny Herbert? Kind of, we weren't sure if he hadn't have won the championship, and then you on the podium, and as like a TV producer, we were so pleased because finally you gave it the big one. You were like, and Max Verstappen, 2-time world champion, and that really helped because that was then in all the edits going forward. But yeah, sort of well, Nico did it last year, didn't he? But apart from that, you've done two of the 3.
No, I've done 3 of the 4.
No, of course, because you did Abu Dhabi as well, didn't you, in 21?
Yeah. So yeah. The Japan one was interesting because, yeah, nobody really knew if he had actually won, and I had it in my ear, yes, he's won, you can deliver the line. So I kind of felt like I was the one that delivered to Max, and he was like, oh, okay, yeah, it has happened, that's cool. This one is always going to be special in Vegas, 4-time world champion. But the one that was the trickiest, and I think for everyone involved, was Abu Dhabi, because I was walking towards the podium where I was going to deliver the lines, and you are world champion, but I was doing it to another driver because I had it all planned in my head that it was going to be Lewis. I had the questions all set up, And then as I'm walking to the podium, I had in my, you guys told me in my ear, actually, no, Max has won the world championship. And it's like, oh, okay. This changes things a little bit. So yeah, it's interesting. And normally you have 3 drivers on the podium that are just happy to be there. But when it's down to a world championship and it's between 2 guys, yeah, it's pretty emotional. More so for them, but also for us asking the question.
Yeah, it's a tough, tough job, and you did it very well. And here's what's coming up. Here's what's coming up on the pod. We're going to reflect on Max Verstappen's 4th world title, as we've just mentioned. We're also going to look at where it leaves Lando Norris, looking ahead to next year, and also discuss the state of the Constructors Championship as we go to Qatar this week. So, look, Jenson, I'm aware you've been with us this weekend. I don't want to necessarily just ask you the same questions as that you've been answering all weekend, because with how impressive Max has been this season, it's easy just to kind of keep talking and you kind of run out of ways to say just how good he's been. But I do think there's a really interesting conversation about comparing his championships, if we could. And, Simon mentioned it, and you said actually that this World Championship perhaps was his most normal, in inverted commas. And I just kind of wondered if you could expand on that. What do you mean by normal? And how do you think Max is kind of going to reflect on the 2024 season when he looks back?
Well, if you look at last year, it was an exceptional year, and that will be the championship that goes down in history, definitely. 2023, where he won, was it 18? Was it 18 races? I mean, that's just nuts. That is just crazy. Obviously, the season's got longer and we have more races, but it blows my mind how they've obviously built a fantastic car last year and were consistently getting the win. And, it's tough for a driver as well because, everything else feels like a failure after that. When you don't win a race and you finish second, it feels like a failure. So to pick yourself up from that to go and win again is always tricky. But he had the best car and he did what he needed to do with it. This year, it was more of a fight, and it's what you normally get in Formula One. It's not straightforward. When I won the World Championship, it was similar. And, when I remember back to Sebastian Vettel winning his first World Championship in 2010, it came down to the last race of who was going to win the World Championship, and there was fights all the way through the season, and it wasn't just a dominant year. This one for me has been just the best season to watch. Obviously the Red Bull and Max so strong at the start of the season, and then it's dropped away. And you've had multiple race winners that have won multiple races, and it just doesn't happen. 7 drivers that have had a chance to win throughout the season. And delivered. So it's been a very competitive year. I think we've seen Max have to go through a very different way of driving. It's about collecting points. It's not about fighting for that victory and that overtaking move that gets the win. It's getting points, and a 5th place at some weekends has been a good result for Max Verstappen. It's very difficult to change your mindset from a win is all I want and everything else is a failure, to 5th being a good result and the best we got out of the car. So I think for him, mentally, it's been a very difficult season, and I'm sure it's after the win in Brazil, it was a breath of fresh air, and then, he knew the title was basically his.
The stats actually back that up as well. I mean, you have to go back to 1983 to find a driver that won a championship in a car that didn't finish in the top 2 in the Constructors Championship, which I guess just goes to show how he's outperformed the car that he's been in. I wanted to get into your 2009 World Championship win, and just like we've seen all the images, right, of this championship win with Max. Take us a bit behind the scenes and like from a driver's perspective, that couple of hours after you win a championship, what is it like? I won't win a Formula One World Championship. Probably most of our listeners won't. You have. Tell us about that experience and the people around you and how that all kind of comes together.
It's I'm sure it's different for everyone, and I think it depends on where you finish in that race. Obviously, I finished 5th. Max has just finished 5th. You don't have the adrenaline of standing on a podium, but there's so much emotion, and I think it's kind of a relief for everyone on the team that we've got to this point, because the stress is through the roof. Every single race up until that moment, there's so much stress. You put so much pressure on yourself, and then finally you've achieved what you set out to do your whole life, not just that year, but your whole life. And it's just, it's a weight off your shoulders, and you can breathe. It's not the emotion that probably everyone thinks it is. I think if the World Championship was one race, there would be that heightened emotion because you've just crossed the finish line, you've won the race. It's a very, very different emotion. And also because you don't really celebrate how you would dream of celebrating because you're straight in front of the cameras. You know, that's not what you dreamt of when you crossed the finish line. You thought you'd get out the car, you'd be with the team for hours on end, just laughing and joking and celebrating and hugging and kissing and drinking. And it's kind of all a bit delayed. So it's a bit of a roller coaster of emotions after winning a world championship. I think it's after that you just, after you've left the track and you have time with the team, that's the moment where all the emotion comes out. And that for me was the most special moment.
And then in the sort of months afterwards, kind of building on what you just said, I guess that's when it does start to sink in. Is that fair? When, you know, actually away from the spotlight, you're just sitting at home, maybe on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or something, you go, oh yeah, wow, what a year what I've just achieved.
Yeah, and it never goes away, you know, because in moments you obviously forget or you just don't think about it. And then you go, oh, okay, yeah. You know, I'm a world champion. And when you're having tough days, and I always used to say when we had kids and you're changing a nappy, it's like, this isn't this isn't the highlight of my life right now. And then you're like, oh, but I'm a world champion, so it's okay. So yeah, I mean, it's always there. It's always in the back of your mind. And I think that's, I'm so lucky to have that emotion that is always there. And so many great memories from that season.
I mean, you had to go to Abu Dhabi with one race left to go after you'd already been crowned the world champion. Max has got to go to Qatar and then also Abu Dhabi as well. So how does the atmosphere change within the team? I mean, this is a triple header, I guess. So those team members are going to be pumped, aren't they? I mean, 3 races in a row, traveling halfway across the globe to the other side. A lot of jet lag, but it just makes it a bit easier, I'm guessing, if you know that you've got a world champion as part of your team.
No, I don't think it does. I think
No.
for us it was because we won the constructors and the drivers in the same weekend. So Abu Dhabi was a bonus race for us. You know, we went there and just had fun, and you could see it in the performance of everyone, including myself. You know, I finished on the podium. I hadn't been on the podium for many races. And the whole weekend was just a lot more enjoyable because we'd done it, you know. Whereas with Red Bull, they're third in the constructors and it's a tough place to be for them. And there's 2 races to go. They can still obviously do better than that if both cars finish first and second, but the other guys don't finish. So they're still going to be pushing on, and there's still a lot of pressure on their shoulders. They don't want to be the team that finished third in the constructors and one of their drivers won the world championship.
Is actually business as usual, isn't it? If not with more pressure, perhaps, because that's
more pressure
where the money is, right? I mean, that's ultimately next year in wind tunnel time and all this sort of stuff. I guess, you know, that all of those become important factors now in the next few weeks. I just final question perhaps on that then, in terms of that kind of addictive nature of winning. And we've heard Max, haven't we, speak so many times in recent years about he doesn't want to be in F1 forever. He's only got a finite amount of energy to expend on being in Formula One. When you sort of look at what he's saying now, do you find it almost hard to believe that as he's winning, he's thinking about not winning? He's thinking about stepping away from the sport? From the outside, I imagine once you're used to winning Formula One races, that is an addictive feeling that you just can't. You want to do it every weekend. Is that true?
I think Max is, there's 2 different types of F1 driver. There's the F1 drivers that are F1 drivers, and that's all that matters to them. You know, when they step away from the sport, they won't race anymore. They'll go and sit on a beach somewhere or find another job that interests them. But for Max and others like myself, you know, we love motor racing. It's not just Formula One. So Max won't step away from winning. He'll step away from Formula One. He'll go and race. You know, he's talked about doing endurance racing, maybe Le Mans, Daytona. Maybe it'll just be sim racing. Who knows? But he will still be there fighting for wins. That's not going to change. It's just the environment will change. Which you know, Formula One, it's the pinnacle. It really is. But there's a lot more pressures on your shoulders than in other categories, and a lot more eyes on you. So who knows? Maybe this will be his last contract in Formula One. He'll see out his contract at Red Bull and then he'll move away. Who knows? But he will be racing for a very long time, just maybe in a different capacity.
I guess a lot easier to race sim racing into your 50s and 60s, isn't it? If you probably a bit easier. Okay, just sort of perhaps the final thing on Max and the championship. I just wonder if, looking at the season that Red Bull have had, looking at the season that Max has had, the issues that team has gone through, and the fact that, being blunt, they haven't had the fastest car since the sort of middle third of the year. Do you think perhaps the win is a little bit of a sticking plaster on the season? And do you think as he goes into next year, we're almost certainly going to have a four-way championship battle? Where do you think that leaves him? Do you think he's going to be looking? I mean, you mentioned this could be his last contract at Red Bull, but do you think he is going to start looking around?
It's funny, actually. He was asked after the race. I love how we already look forward to 2025.
Yeah, I know.
We should be celebrating the win of 24. It's like,
it's
so
a
Max,
podcast.
if we start the F1 season like we've ended it, does that put you guys in a really difficult position as a team? It's like, but but it will. And you look at it as they're probably the third best, if not fourth best manufacturer at the moment. Fourth best team. So it is tricky. But then Mac came back with, but we haven't had the best car since the sort of the 7th or 8th race, and they still haven't closed on me in the championship, which is a good point. So it's maybe he's making more of the difference, but they're still able to get the maximum out of the car every weekend, even though it's not a win. I think they're maximizing what they have, and I don't think the other teams are doing that as much. They're not maximizing what they have on any given weekend. So as a team, they are still great. They just don't have the performance in the car like we've expected over the last 3.5 years. But if they start like they are now, it puts a lot of pressure on the drivers to really maximize every weekend. So it's a tough one. So maybe he will look elsewhere, but they've given him so much over the last few years in terms of performance. It's always a tricky one for a driver. He doesn't want to leave a team that's given him so much, but he's got to think of number one, which is himself.
Now, before we get on to talk about Lando Norris's season, a quick word on our podcast sponsor, Dropbox. In Formula One, it's all about teamwork and timing. For the McLaren Formula One team, this involves more than 1,200 individuals working together seamlessly, making split-second decisions on the track and digging into terabytes of data between races to prep for the next one. Every millisecond counts, and collaboration is everything. That's where Dropbox, McLaren's official technology partner, comes in. With Dropbox Dash, the team can find and manage everything they need across their work apps, boosting their speed and focus where it matters. Fancy seeing how teamwork and technology helps fuel the McLaren Formula One team's success? Visit dropbox.com/McLaren-F1 for your exclusive behind-the-scenes look. Let's move on to talk about Lando Norris, because as Max has won his world championship, that kind of confirms, doesn't it, that Lando wasn't going to win this year. He knew, obviously, after Brazil, his chances were very, very slim. I just wonder how you will reflect and how you think Lando will reflect on this season. Some really interesting quotes I thought came out from him this weekend. He said, "I probably wasn't outright ready to go up against Red Bull and Max. I think I am now." Do you almost think this season is perhaps a bit of a kind of a learning season for him, and going into next year, he is going to possess the skills and that's required to go up against Max and Red Bull?
Yeah, totally agree. I think he's shown his skill and his speed. He's got a lot to be proud of in what he's achieved. It was a slim chance, but he was fighting for a world championship in F1. I mean, it's an awesome position to find yourself in. A lot of it's down to his talent, but also it just proves how good the team have been and how they've improved over the last few years. I obviously remember McLaren back in 2016 when I left the sport, a little bit different to where they are right now. So no, proud of the team as well of what they've been able to achieve over those last 8 years and improve. But yes, I think going up against Max is a different animal than anyone else on the grid to go up against. He knows his goals in a race, whether that's to win or just to beat you as his championship rival, and he just aims at you. He forgets what else is going on around him, and his aim is to beat you. And we saw that on many occasions, especially in Austin and Mexico. And when someone is that dedicated to just beat you, that's tough. That's really, really difficult because they don't care what is going on around. You could lose 5 places. Max didn't care. It was all about beating Lando. So that's difficult when someone's got, basically got a target on your back. But he would have learned a lot of how to race Max this year. Max is aggressive. He pushes it to the limit, sometimes over the limit, as we saw in Mexico. But he would have learned a lot. And I am really excited to see a slightly different Lando next year. He will be studying every bit of footage that he has from this season, the racing against Max. And he will come out much stronger next year, and we'll see a different Lando, I think, which is good. It's all learning. And until you've gone up against someone like Max, you don't know how you're going to react.
What would you do over the winter if you were Lando Norris? How do you think you'd spend a lot of your time? What percentage would be, say, in the sim? What percentage would be, like you say, like looking back at footage? How does a driver develop their skill set in the winter break?
I could sit here and say, he should be in the sim every day. He should study every bit of footage. He should completely understand the systems, which he should. But he also needs a break. This is such a long season. And it's so easy in this sport to burn out for anyone, especially the pressure you put yourself under as a driver. And I think Lando he's an emotional character, which is great to see. It's great for us seeing that on TV, his personality. But it must be just very tiring how emotional he gets about a result, and he's very negative about his driving, even though he's not really made a mistake. So I think for him, it's time away. It's relax, sit on a beach, forget about motor racing for a while, which is not easy, but it's got to be done. And you come back a lot fresher. You're more ready. But as I said, he also needs to do his homework.
He mentioned as well after the race, he said, in a championship battle, you have so many more eyes on you. It's a much different pressure when every quali lap you do is analysed to the nth degree. I just wonder, again, I just find it very interesting to talk about your experience in 2009 stuff. Was there a moment where you went, oh, hold on a minute, I'm getting asked a lot more questions this weekend, or wow, I feel like now I'm in a championship battle?
Well, I was from the word go in 2009 because we had the quickest car, but it was obviously, when we stopped winning, it got difficult because there were so many questions asked. And I was in that mindset that everything else apart from a win was a failure. So, yeah, here we go. Lenny, come say hi. Come say hi, Lenny.
My mommy's not coming, Daddy.
Your mummy's not here. Daddy's here. Let's say hi.
My mom's not coming.
What do you think about the Max and Lando fight this year, Lenny?
Can't be drawn.
No, exactly.
Can't be drawn on an answer.
No. See you later, Lenny Bug. Right. Wait. When you have that mindset that winning is everything and everything else is a failure, it's really tough when you stop winning. So I really found that, and I think for me, I put extra pressure on my shoulders because I knew that this was a special year. We didn't have the funds to improve the car through the season. We weren't a works team. I didn't know if this would ever happen again, and it never happened again in terms of me having the opportunity to fight for a world championship. So I put way too much pressure on myself, and I knew it, but trying to get yourself out of that position was very difficult, and it kind of just spirals out of control. And then you get asked silly questions by the media. I got asked one question in Spa, which was, Jenson, do you actually want to win this world championship? That's what I got asked the lead up to the weekend. And, that doesn't really help. And I think for Max, for example, this year, he was in a different situation. He'd already won 3 world championships, a lot more confidence. But for me, it really hurt, being down and knowing this is my only opportunity, too much pressure on my shoulders. And I went about it the wrong way. I ended up tightening up and thinking every point counts, so I can't make any mistakes. And then you just don't drive as fast. You don't take any risks. And that's dangerous in itself. So, if I went about it now, it would have been a much more straightforward championship winning year.
I hope you gave that journalist You probably gave them a good look, did you? That was like, that is a tough question. Go away.
What? Every time I'm in front of the media now, I remind him of it, and everyone.
Oh, really?
Knows.
Yeah.
Everyone knows. So it's actually quite funny.
Can laugh about it now, a few years later. Just with regards to the Constructors Championship, then, I mean, 24 points now the gap between McLaren and Ferrari. We've got 59 points on offer over the next couple of races, including the sprint in Qatar. We asked a question on the podcast last week: Do fans care about the Constructors Championship? And you know what? I think I personally really do. I think the fact that it's now between McLaren and Ferrari is really exciting. Either of those stories is amazing. 1998, the last World Championship of McLaren, and then Ferrari, 2008, but also you've got Carlos Sainz departing, you've got Lewis coming in, and obviously Fred Vasseur's tenure as well. There's a lot of nice things there. I mean, this is of course assuming Sergio Perez doesn't start winning or getting loads of points in the next few races, which would mean that Red Bull still are in with a shout. I mean, how excited? Is it fair to say you're excited for the Constructors Championship? Like, how are you looking at it?
I'm really excited. You know, the World Championships, Drivers' World Championships is over. So yeah, we turn our attention to the Constructors. And two great teams. One of them hasn't won the Constructors since 1998, being McLaren, even though they won the World Championship with obviously Hakkinen in 99 and with Lewis in 2008. It's been 26 years since they've won a Constructors. So they're going to feel the pressure. They're going to be like, this is it. This is the one, which is awesome. And, you know, I think they have two great drivers, both highly skilled and aggressive. And I love watching them race. And they're allowed to race each other, which is good. And they're going up against Charles and Carlos. And I think that is, wow, those are four impressive drivers. I'm not sure who I would want in my team if I had a team fighting for the Constructors Championship. So it will depend on the circuits. You know, I think this was a good circuit for Ferrari in terms of Vegas. Not many high-speed corners, long straights, heavy braking, traction. Qatar is very different. It's very fast and flowing. It's a smooth track. So if we look at Mercedes, you'd say that they're going to be competitive because they can get their car low. So there might not be the big points to play for. And if the big points aren't to play for, it's a lot more difficult for Ferrari to catch McLaren in the championship. And then we obviously end in Abu Dhabi, which is a circuit similar to Vegas. So again, it's in favor of Ferrari. So I can't wait. It's going to be really fun to watch. And we're all going to be trying to do the math behind the scenes. I'm actually commentating in Qatar with Crofty as well, so I'll be in the box there trying to work out who's where. And so I'm really excited. It's a lot more complicated when you've got four drivers, right, to try and work out the point system and of who's going to clinch the Constructors. So yeah, I think there's more attention on it this year than ever before, the Constructors.
Not a Red Bull or not a Mercedes. Sort of final question on Qatar. You mentioned their Mercedes should look pretty good out there. I just wonder, with their performance this weekend, Lewis being bullish and saying that, you know, he could have won had he had a better qualifying session. He felt the win was on the table for him. Obviously, I mean, bless him, George Russell. We haven't really mentioned him yet. We're going to make this more about Max Verstappen, but plenty of time for George Russell to compete for a world championship. But I mean, what a story that would be if Lewis could just get one more win with Mercedes, and it was happening these last couple of races. Obviously, having been so despondent in Brazil to then come through and have another win. I mean, that would be an epic story, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. And they're all night races. So, you know, Qatar can still be quite warm. But from what I'm only going on what George said, you know, George said that they love smooth tracks. They're able to get the car low. They don't have the help of the cool temperatures, which seems to help the Mercedes, but it is smooth Qatar. So we got to wait and see on that one. And Abu Dhabi is a very similar track to Vegas. So a little bit warmer, but it still won't be warm. It's nighttime. It will sort of be in the teens rather than the single digits like we had in Vegas. So there's every reason why they can fight for wins in the last two. And it would be a great sign off for Lewis. You know, it's 10 years and a couple of days now since he won his first world championship with Mercedes. And it would be lovely if he could sign off with a win. It's definitely mixed emotions when you do that, though, because, you know, it's lovely to sign off after 10 years with a team, but then you're leaving that team. You're like, hang on a second, was this the right decision? So we will see.
Thank God Ferrari. I mean, they've been fluctuating throughout the season, but I feel like he's leaving as Ferrari have seemed to have found some really good form. So I'm sure he won't be looking too regretfully on that decision. Okay, just time to tell you about the timings for this weekend. We've got F1, F2 and F1 Academy, so a packed schedule out in Qatar. FP1, we're on air from 1 o'clock for a session start of 1:30. Then it's sprint qualifying from 5 o'clock, cars on track at 5:30. Saturday build up to the sprint from 1 o'clock before a lights out at 2 o'clock, then qualifying later in the afternoon. Join us from 5:15 ahead of a session start of 6. And then on Sunday, join us for all the build up to the Qatar Grand Prix at 2:30 for a lights out at 4 o'clock. Jenson, you are going to be jet lag city, aren't you? Going from, well, I mean, you're just going to be doing it a bit later than everyone else. So I guess you're going to be a bit tireder than everyone else. Any top tips, jet lag tips? People how you might be able to take on?
Top tips. Try and sleep at the time zone you're going to before you arrive, which isn't easy, especially when you got 2 little kids who wake you up at 6 a.m. But it's all good.
Jensen, we look forward to hearing you in comms this weekend. Very exciting. And thank you very much for joining us on the pod this week. We're going to be back, as always, next Tuesday. Hope you can join us then. Bye for now.